Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Yes, very well.
Not too bad.
Oh, you've upset Swanee.
Oh, you're
brought
right,
her
Swanee.
down.
You need to lift me up.
Oh,
Don't
well,
you bring me down today.
Are you going to have something sort of upbeat and...
No.
No.
Sorry.
See, this is the thing, right? Once you're downtrodden, it's hard to get back up again because people just keep walking on you.
Indeed.
And this is what Schmidty's going to do.
Well, I didn't know
You
he was
evil
going to
pole.
go back to his dark side, but he did. Anyway, before we get on to my story, today's a bit of a special episode.
Is it? Why?
Do tell.
Well, it's our 100th episode.
Oh, my gosh.
Are we centurions?
No, well, I don't know about that, but what's the song? They said you'd
But
never make it.
But
You remember that song?
finally
Yes.
came through.
Lily
They
came
said
through.
you never
Yeah.
get
She never made...
Well, when we started
this one...
for you or something.
Made for
Maybe
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it a
maybe.
beer ad?
Is it a beer, isn't it?
I think
It's a beer.
Yeah,
It's
I
a beer.
think
I
so.
always go back to beer ads, don't I? They're the
We
best.
all do. They're from our era, yes.
When we first started, not that he said it to my face, but a certain person who I'm now married to didn't think that it would last more than a few weeks, this little fad of ours.
Oh.
And it's now been just under 2 years.
Yeah.
Just under 2 years of recording.
It was a Swan Lager ad.
For Swanee Lager ad.
This one's made for...
They said you'd never make it. Surfing's more your game. And your golf is
Surfing?
erratic.
There were different ones. It's Mark Richards, isn't it?
No, that's...
Golfer.
Greg Norman.
Aussie, is it?
Greg Norman. Greg Norman.
golfer.
Oh, Greg Norman.
Norman,
Oh.
yes.
It must have been heartbreaking when you knew what you could do. They said you'd never make it, but you finally came through. For all of you who've made it,
This
This one's made for you.
made for you. Made for you.
This one.
You made it through, and
This
this one's made for you.
Oh, that's nice.
Bring back Mojo. Now, that was real advertising.
Wasn't it?
I loved it. It was. Mojo were phenomenal.
There you go.
All right. Well, on that note, I suppose we should introduce ourselves. Who are we? I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are...
Trial
by Wine.
Wine.
And what are we drinking? You've told SJP to piss off, I hope, boys?
Because you gave us the heads up that you were going to give us a pretty nasty one, we booted her to the curb and we're on to the Delatite Rosé.
Oh, delicious.
Delicious.
Beautiful.
We are.
Oh.
Yes. What about you,
And Shane?
Swanee?
Yeah.
Nothing. Empty can.
Oh, she's cracked it.
I forgot to sort
The
myself.
hump,
I
yeah.
forgot to sort myself.
Oh.
Quick, someone send her a hug.
Text
I'm good.
a family member.
You could love that.
SOS, I need a rosé. I'm drinking still on a vodka tonic, but I also have my last mango chutney for this episode. So I suppose I should get on with it. By now, I'm sure you're convinced from our last episode that I did that werewolves really do walk amongst us. Not only is that true, and yes, I used inverted commas, but apparently you can actually be a kind of mix of cryptid and, something else when you're all kinds of insane. I came across this story while looking at the werewolf crimes, and this is yet another bizarre and full-on story I've never heard of. I've called it a crossover cryptid, but then I discovered that one of the things he's
A
referred to as...
crossover cryptid.
Yeah, but then it turns out that vampires are not cryptids, so it's not really a crossover
Oh.
cryptid, yeah. But It's sort of a crossover anyway, because this guy was called the Werewolf of Wisteria. That's how I found it. And he was also known as the Brooklyn Vampire and the Moon Maniac. I quite like that one.
The Moon Maniac.
It's his moon.
That's
Got a real
new.
ring to it. Oh, you're such a moon maniac.
Yeah, the Boogeyman and the Grey Man, which is also not a cryptid as far as I know, but it is a little bit like Slenderman.
Slenderman,
yeah. So my sources are Wikipedia, Ranker, crimemuseum.com, allthat'sinteresting.com, and an exceptionally detailed book available on truetv.com by Marilyn Bardsley.
What was the book entitled?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
It's just on there. I don't think it might have had a title.
No
I can't
worries,
remember
no
what it
worries.
was.
I thought that was going to give it away. That's why I asked.
I know I've covered some doozies before, and I do know that we have recently pointed out that Clarkey does all the dark ones, and not that I'm trying to knock him off his pedestal or anything like that. The story I've got to tell you had me feeling quite nauseous while I was actually reading it, and I normally don't feel that way when I'm researching, so big time trigger warnings. This story deals with horrific sexual and physical abuse, kidnap, murder and mutilation of children.
Oh my
Look at
God.
that smile on your face, Swanee.
I'm not
Just-
smiling.
Nothing like a Friday night. Like the depths of despair.
We'll do this again, won't we, Swanee?
So Hamilton Howard Albert Fish, which
Is that the crime?
reminded me. No, but remember how Bud Tingle used to? I can't remember his Charles. I think it was Charles Bud Tingle, and Bud was always in inverted commas because he preferred to be called Bud. Well, Albert's a bit the same. He was first born on the 19th of May in 1870 so we're back in the timey-wimey, in Washington, D.C.
In what year, sorry?
1870.
1870.
So
And
you can at least have a separation of time with this one, yeah?
okay.
His early life didn't get off to the best of starts. His parents had grasped the concept of a May-December romance with gusto, though in their case it probably should be called a February-December romance. Are you going to ask what it is, Clarky, or do you know?
I have no idea. Is it
It's
a thing?
when
Do you know what it is,
there's a
Swanee?
huge age gap between them, yeah. So usually old man, young woman.
Yeah. Is there like a Richard Gere movie or something? Is there called?
I don't know where it came from, but yeah, that's the expression.
What's the one? What's the expression that you normally use?
I don't really get it.
May December.
romance.
May, December.
Well, put it this way.
That's only a few months.
It refers to a romantic relationship where there is a drastic difference in age between the two participants.
That will become clear in my next sentence. Randall Fish was 75, so Hamilton's, or Albert, his father, was 75 when Albert was born. And he was 43
Jesus.
years older than
In
his
the
wife, Ellen.
1800s,
Yeah, and his wife, Ellen, was
he's
43
like
years younger.
Yoda.
Yes.
Living to the mid-70s in the 1870s, that's not normal, is it?
Mm.
Oh, I need to add something. This is why it matters. And I didn't understand this because I learned this in the movie because it was based on Central Park. It relates to seasons. So, again, obviously not a Southern Hemisphere thing, but the months symbolise the seasons, with spring representing youth and winter representing old age. So you get it? So the young person is May,
right.
December. So spring.
Yes,
so that's
okay.
what I had. Yep.
Yeah.
That would have been useful when I wrote my notes, because February's also winter, so that doesn't work.
Well, we've all learned something.
We have,
Winter
and
to
I'm glad you
winter.
enjoyed that little laugh. That was good.
It's the last one you'll have.
Yeah. Clearly his swimmers were working, though one might ask whether there was some degradation of the genetic matter once we get further down the line.
Oh, no.
Albert was the youngest of four, and although his real name was Hamilton, he was given the nickname Ham and Eggs, which he hated so much that he decided he preferred Albert, which was actually the name of one of his siblings who was deceased. So I thought that was a bit gross. His father, somewhat unsurprisingly, died when he was just 5, as in Albert was just 5, not his father. He didn't Benjamin Button.
God, so he made it to
5.
80.
Yeah. And his mother couldn't cope. His mother, Ellen, she couldn't cope with the children or life. She had some issues. So he was put in an orphanage where he spent much of his childhood.
Oh.
So at some point I'm going to start calling him Bertie, because I prefer that over Albert. Not only was his mother suffering with
You
mental
do you,
illness.
darling. It's a story about you, not him.
Mm-hmm. A bunch of other relatives were also afflicted. An uncle with mania, a brother who was put in a mental hospital, a half-brother with schizophrenia, and his sister was diagnosed with a mental affliction. I don't know what it was.
Jeepers.
His mother, Ellen, also had oral and visual hallucinations, and 3 other relatives were diagnosed with mental illness. So I guess it would have been pretty amazing if young Bertie didn't have some sort of affliction. At the orphanage, life was pretty shit. The children were regularly beaten and abused.
I've seen Oliver. I know how it goes.
That
stopped me laughing in my tracks. I was like, oh, sorry. No, sorry, orphans.
No, it was shit. Sorry, orphans.
Sorry, orphans.
So the orphans were regularly beaten and abused and at times encouraged to do terrible things to each other. It was in this environment that Bertie developed a taste for pain.
Oh.
He relished the beatings and began to form a sexual pleasure from the pain his tormentors inflicted on him and others.
Here we go.
By 1880...
He might get a role in the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, he's a bit. He likes a bit of self-flagellation. Yeah. By 1880, Ellen was able to get a government job and took him out of the orphanage, but he would say later the damage was already done. 2 years later, at the age of 12, Bertie started a relationship with a telegraph boy who was also into some niche activities.
Niche activities?
Mm-hmm. So I've heard the expression, don't yuck my yum. And I have no issue with consenting adults doing what they like with whom they like, as long as everyone agrees and knows what the deal is. But underage kids engaging in urolagnia and coprophagia, which if we hark back to episode 2, the Swiss cheese pervert, I talked about various forms of paraphilia. The first, which I can't say again, is defined as associating sexual excitement with the sight or thought of urine, including drinking or bathing in urine, wetting yourself or seeing someone else do it, smelling urine-soaked clothing or body parts, and in modern slang can be called water sports.
Goodness.
I tell you, though, if anyone enjoys this, there are a few multi-level car parks in Melbourne that just reek of piss. Get yourselves down there.
Or alleyways.
Yeah. The stairwell.
Oh, God.
The stairwells.
Oh, the stairwell. Oh, makes your eyes water.
There's an alleyway in Melbourne that runs between Lonsdale and Little Collins, I think it is. And it's one person wide until you get to a bit of it. And literally when it's hard having 2 people walk past each other. It's kind of uncomfortable, but it reeks. And I don't know why people would pick that spot, but I think it must be they're on Lonsdale and they are that desperate. They just go, oh, look.
I think it's homeless people. I've always felt it was homeless people.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. You know how homeless people, well, maybe it's just because they smell the same.
I reckon it's just drunken idiots.
I was in a Bunnings the other day and I watched this man and he was about, 10 metres away from me. And I smelled him before I saw him. And he smelled like he was homeless.
Is that because you're a werewolf?
No, it's because he stank.
Yeah.
Because he reeked of piss, of stale urine. And
you're not a cryptid.
Just filth, no. And I watched him and I thought, he's dodgy. And then later, Mum and I were in the garden centre and I watched him walk past me with a pack of Ryobi something or other. And he did the runner on it. And the police were there 5 minutes later or whatever. But it was the smell that
did they catch him? Follow the scent? They got the sniffer dogs out.
I did say, he smells really bad. You can find him.
And they were weeing all the time.
I thought they thought I was crazy. Yeah. But I did give a very good description of him because of all the work that we do in Trial by Wine. I was much more aware. Yeah.
You not only profiled him, you gave him suggestions as to what you thought his background and
childhood
may have been like.
Which way he would have run.
Yeah.
I could have said to them, that guy's going to shoplift. I watched him and I go,
you go, gateway crime, get him down.
I literally went, Mum, see that guy there? He's about to run off with those tools.
Get the
chainsaw. Turns around and woof it goes. Yeah, anyway, the second paraphilia that I spoke of is coprophagia, is, as you may have already guessed it, eating shit.
Had not.
Yes.
I did not guess that. I didn't even.
No.
To be honest, I didn't guess anything. I was too lazy at this point to just. I was like, you'll tell me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I've told you.
I've been told. I'm not even going to ask to remember the name.
It's like they've given it a name so no one will ever guess.
Poo chomper.
Poo chomper.
Bertie was a bit of a shit eater. Yes.
Oh.
Now, undoubtedly, you want to know whose shit. No. And apparently it can be anyone's or any species that turns you on.
Actually, Is there a way we can fast
turns
forward
you
this
on.
podcast
Apparently, yeah,
past
yeah.
this bit? So that Pooseum
Who did they
in
tell-
Hobart, imagine how they'd be so
yeah.
excited in a
Yeah.
museum.
It's funny because when I was writing this, at this exact point in this part of the story, I decided to have a little break. And I went outside.
Is that a euphemism for
No,
a
I
poo?
just went outside. I think I went to the toilet and then I went outside.
Have a Kit Kat?
Yeah, I went outside and I was on the balcony. I looked down and there's Boof and he's sniffing his own poo. And then he does this little look around and then he's about to, because he likes to eat his own poo. And then I got his attention, said, "Don't you do that." And I caught him and I picked, got a poo bag and cleaned it up, whatever. And I was laughing to myself going, "Oh, that dog, he's got coprophagia, he has." And I thought,
You filthy little
coprophagia face or whatever it is. Coprophagiac.
Coprophagia.
Although, no, he doesn't do it for sex. I don't know why he does it. I can tell you what he
How
does
do you
do for
know?
sex, though, because he enjoys a bucket.
Are you right down there?
He
Oh my God.
rubs himself on a bucket and
Hump a
gets
leg
very
like
excited.
everyone else
On a
does.
No,
bucket.
he likes a bucket. We
Right.
call it his fucket bucket. Those people who don't know who Boof is, he's a Staffordshire Terrier that belongs to my husband.
I was going to make up something, but you're too quick.
My
I was gonna
child.
say Boof is like they're next door neighbours.
Son.
14-year-old son.
We keep him downstairs in a dungeon.
So Bertie
He comes
then...
through the hole in the fence.
That's right, yeah.
Literally.
And he also walks around sometimes, yeah. Bertie then started to hang out at the public baths where he liked to watch and would spend a lot of his weekends perving on other boys. Do you remember the Guinness ad? I like to watch.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. When he wasn't busy doing that, he was crafting obscene letters, a pen pal of sorts, to women whose details he got from the classifieds and marriage agencies. So fast forward a few years, and in 1890, at the age of 20, Bertie moved to the Big Apple. Now, a lot of people go to New York to find fame on Broadway or work on Wall Street or any of the many legal employment opportunities the big city affords. Bertie decided to become a prostitute and spent his time molesting and raping little boys. He
I
also
thought you were going to
found...
say he went there for the
He
variety
didn't have to
of
become a
shit that he could
prostitute to do
find.
No,
that.
but he was doing it as well.
Yeah, no, that... Right.
That was just his
He
side
was
hustle.
prostituting himself.
That's how he
when
made
was
the money to
also
get around.
abusing
Pedoing.
children. Yes, pedoing, yeah.
I think that's the correct term.
I think at that point in time, he definitely preyed on people who were vulnerable. So we're talking about very poor children, kids that he didn't think that anyone would care about or notice.
That old
and it was the
chestnut.
1890s, right? So there were lots of kids that people didn't care about or notice. Anyway, he also found time to get married to a woman named Anna in 1898 when he was 28.
I didn't see that coming.
I'm going to have to hazard a guess that he was bisexual. Anna was 21 at the time, and they went on to produce 6 children together.
Oh, my Lord.
Yep. He was continuing to have sexual encounters and relationships with men and raping boys throughout his marriage. He recalled going to a wax museum with one of his lovers where he was fascinated by a bisection of a human penis. And there was born his latest kink, sexual mutilation.
Oh.
Around 1910, Bertie was working in Wilmington, Delaware.
As a prostitute?
No, he wasn't at that point in time. I think
After he got married, did he like have a veneer of
respectability might be when he went to Delaware.
Did he work in the poo farm?
Imagine him in a sewage work.
No, I think
They
he
do
was a
free
painter
lunch at the poo
decorator
farm.
or
You wouldn't
something.
believe it.
I think he was a painter decorator or a handyman or something. He wasn't working at a sewage farm. Oh, he would never got any work done if he was in a sewage
Oh,
farm.
no.
Goes to Wilmington, and then I wasn't sure exactly when he left New York. And then he started a relationship with a 19-year-old called Thomas Kedden. And I think Bertie was about 40. Did I say he was born in 1870? Carla, got
Yep.
your notes?
1870, yeah, you
Yeah,
did.
1870.
Yeah, so-
He moved to New York in 1890.
Yeah, he's-
and where are we now?
Wilmington, Delaware in 1910.
Wilmington.
Yeah.
19.
So-
I love how
he's-
you're referring to Carla's notes, not your
Because
own.
I know,
Schmidty.
well, because
Well
then I
done.
have to slide up and then I'll lose my spot. And I know she'll
I just
take-
do dates
I
and
know
stuff.
she does
I
it.
just
She
do
does.
dates and stuff.
And geography.
Yeah,
She does the geography. Yeah. Geography, yeah. He starts this relationship, 19-year-old Thomas Kedden. The two were engaged in a sadomasochistic relationship. So there is some suggestion that Thomas was intellectually disabled and may not have consented or really understood what they were up to.
Gross.
After 10 days of hooking up, Bertie invited Thomas to an old farmhouse where he locked him up and tortured him for 2 weeks. He had the plan to kill Thomas, dismember him and take him home. But then he was concerned that as it was hot weather, the smell would draw attention to him. So he tied poor Thomas up, cut off half of his penis, poured peroxide over it, wrapped it in a Vaseline-soaked hanky, gave him $10, kissed him goodbye, and left. Of this encounter, Bertie recalled...
Did he hang on to the half his penis, or did he give it to him? It's a little bit Sada Abe, isn't it?
A little bit. Of this encounter, Bertie recalled, I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me. Took the first train I could get back home. Never heard what became of him or tried to find out. As Bertie became more erratic and mad, because I think he was pretty nutty, his poor wife Anna left him for another man in 1917. Sadly, she didn't take the kids with her and they were left with Bertie. But I did read that he didn't abuse his own children, just other people's, though he did encourage them and their friends to paddle his bot with his nail-studded paddle. What a guy.
What?
Right up there.
What, your dad didn't do that?
Don't remember that, no.
Who has a nail-studded paddle anyway?
Yeah, see, we didn't have a nail-studded paddle. If we did, I'm sure you asked.
Right. Had to use a wooden spoon instead.
It's the old self-flagellation tool. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, his wife leaving him probably tipped him over whatever edge was left, though how you can call the past 20 years of some sick shit a precipice, I'm not sure. Anyway, the voices in his head were urging him to go further, do more harm. He started that by hurting himself, and he did enjoy pain after all.
That's a good point to start.
Yeah, he would embed needles into his groin and abdomen.
Oh,
I read somewhere that more specifically he would push them into his anus and perineum.
Oh, I used to do that. Do you used to get a safety pin and put it? Do you remember what I'm talking about? When you get a safety pin and go under the skin.
Yeah.
Do you remember that thing that everyone? I saw it referenced some other day and I'd forgotten.
I thought you meant in your anus.
No.
I was just joking. But like kids in the 80s, it was used to be
absolutely.
and put it just under the skin.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You can relate.
I did make me laugh. It did make me laugh when I saw it. I thought, fuck yeah, I did do that.
Yeah.
When you say into his anus, do you mean through the hole that was already there, or did he make another one?
No, he just would push, I suppose the puckery bit, he would just push a nail as far up as he could. He didn't remove them. He pushed them all up and left them there.
Oh, what?
He left them there for what, forever or how long?
Yeah, I'll get to at the end of the story.
How did that?
At the end of the story, I'll tell you
that can't go well, can it?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And here we have it, something that we haven't heard before. I've not heard that one before.
And then did he go and have cock and bum fun?
Let me tell you what he did also. He liked to do a bit of the old self-flagellation, as I said, hitting himself with his nail-studded paddle. And he also enjoyed inserting wool soaked with lighter fluid into his anus and setting it alight. Blimey.
What?
So imagine lots of cotton wool.
Enjoy doing that.
Put a bit of lighter fluid on it, pop it up your
Then what
bum
happens?
sack. Up your bum sack.
Your bum sack.
Set it on fire. I'm guessing it burns
What could
the
go
interior of your bum sack.
Oh, it's
until
so
you
much
actually
fun.
have the
It
bum
makes me
sack.
laugh.
You would so oh my God, the damage that would do.
hurt.
Oh,
It would hurt. That was the point. He enjoyed pain.
But beyond hurt, that would scar
that
you.
would damage though.
I'm amazed he didn't
Get
die.
rid of all your polyps, though.
I'm amazed.
Certainly, he wouldn't have had a
That's
hairy
why I didn't get
crack,
bowel
that's for
cancer.
sure.
No, a bit singed.
I'm
the
amazed he didn't
stench
die of
of
infection.
burning hair.
Yeah.
Wish he had it by the sounds of it.
Things start to escalate, and in 1919, Bertie stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown. Like so many other killers, he basically looked for people who were on the fringes of society. He also said he paid boys to procure other children for him, so you can chalk sex trafficking up as a charge too. Though the outcome was sexual pleasure for him, he tortured, mutilated and murdered children with what he called his implements of hell, a meat cleaver, butcher's knife and a handsaw. As things escalated, he had a couple of goes at some kids who turned out to be very lucky. Beatrice Keel came across his path in July 1924, but her mother chased him off. He came back again, but fortunately Beatrice's father saw him off and so she was safe. Sadly, 3 days later, Frances McDonald was not so lucky. In July of 1924, 8-year-old Frances McDonald played on the front porch of his home in the pastoral Charlton Woods section of Staten Island. His mother sat nearby, nursing her infant daughter, when she saw a gaunt, elderly man with grey hair and moustache in the middle of the street. So at this point, he's about 54. But he did look like a shambly old, like he was quite grey at this point. He looked quite old.
Those needles up his arse will do that. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought that would make
turn
him
your hair's grey.
And those wool rockets, yeah. She stared at the strange, shabby old man who constantly clenched and unclenched his fists and mumbled to himself.
Butthole that was clenching.
That scary old man, yeah.
From the
voices in his
flames.
head. He tipped his dusty hat to her and then disappeared down the street. Later that afternoon, the old man was seen again watching Francis and 4 other boys play ball. The old man called Francis over to him. The other boys continued to play ball. A few minutes later, both the old man and Francis had disappeared. A neighbour noticed a boy that looked like Francis walking that afternoon into a wooded area with an elderly grey-haired tramp behind him. When Francis failed to come home after his game of catch, he was reported missing and a search began. They found the body of Francis hanging by a tree in the woods near his home. He'd been sexually assaulted, strangled with his own suspenders, beaten, and had extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen. The autopsy report also indicated that his left hamstring had been almost stripped of flesh.
What?
Whilst the description, he'd flayed him a bit. Whilst the description of the grey man was provided, the police were unable to find anyone fitting it and the case went cold. And that's where he gets that name. One of his names is the Grey Man.
The Grey Man.
On February 11, 1927, 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. So 2 Billy boys, but little kids. When the 12-year-old left for his apartment, he'd actually heard his little baby sister crying. So he went to see what was up with her because he'd been left to babysit all of them. When he came back, he found Billy Beaton, the 3-year-old, on the roof of the apartment and there was no sign of Billy Gaffney. When asked what happened to Gaffney, Beaton said the boogeyman took him. Gaffney's body was never recovered. The following year, on May 25, 1828, Bertie saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Butt, 406 West 15th Street." Bertie, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward. He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. He introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. He promised to hire Bud and his friend Willie and said he would send for them in a few days. He didn't show up when he was meant to come, but then he sent a telegram to the Budd family apologising and set a later date. When Bertie returned, he met Edward's younger sister, 10-year-old Grace Budd. Grace had just come in from church wearing her white confirmation dress, stockings and pearls, and immediately Bertie decided he had to eat her. He impressed the family by asking Grace to count how much money he had. And he had about $92 on him, which was a small fortune at the time, because they were a little bit like the dad. He looks like a tramp, right? He's dressed really badly. And he says he's got this really successful farm and everyone's really happy there and we've got really good staff and everything's really great. And so the dad was a bit unsure about the whole thing. But when he pulls out this wad of cash, he's starting to think, oh, okay, maybe he just doesn't dress very well. So he tells them that he has to go to his niece's birthday party, and that's why he had to go. As he was leaving, almost as an aside or a sudden thought, he says, "Oh, why don't I take Gracie to the party? There'll be other little girls there for her to play with. It'll be nice for her, and I'll have her back around tea time." Now, Grace's mother Delia wasn't really keen on this, but the father thought it'd be a nice treat, so they let her go, and they never saw Grace again. An investigation launched, but the address he'd given for the party was fictitious, as was this Frank Howard. Initially, the police response was huge, with lots of public notices looking for Grace, but over time, the case went totally cold. One investigator, William F. King, continued to try to solve the case. At this time, they had no clues, nothing to go on. So William would plant the odd fake story in the newspaper column, which was written by Walter Winchell. So he'd seed fake stories and little things of pieces with that intention of trying to get either people will give us a clue or the killer themselves will come out. And on November the 2nd, 1934, Winchell picked this up, writing in his column, "I checked on the Grace Budd mystery. She was 8 when she was kidnapped about 6 years ago. And it's safe to tell you that the Department of Missing Persons will break the case, or they expect to, in 4 weeks. 10 days later, Delia Budd received a letter. However, she was actually illiterate, so she couldn't read it.
It was just a piece of paper.
And frankly, in this case, it was probably a good thing. No, it had words on it, but she couldn't read it. So her son, Edward, read it to her, and then he ran off to get the detective. Okay, now brace yourselves.
God, what?
This is the
bit we've got to brace ourselves for.
To her mother.
Needles up the butt and eating.
Shit eating.
Don't tell her what he did to her.
My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At that time, there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all the children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stewed meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body and sold as a veal cutlet, brought in the highest price. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7 and one 11, took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them, to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and, of course, the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except head, bones and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, stewed. The little boy was next, went the same way. All that time I was living in 409 East 100 St. Rear right side. He told me so often how good human flesh was, I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3rd, 1928, I called on you at 406 West 15th Street. Brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her, on the pretense of taking her to a party. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When I was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. How's that for a letter to receive, eh? 6 years after your kids disappeared.
No words.
Speechless.
It's a shocker. Oh, he writes some shocking letters, I got to tell you. This gave them some clues, mostly that only Frank Howard would have known the particulars of the pot cheese in the first meeting. So they knew it was coming from the killer, right? And the way in which Grace was taken. Unsurprisingly, they couldn't find anything on this Captain John character because he didn't exist. And most likely the first part of the letter is a weird fantasy. And the bit about the 2 boys that Captain John's supposed to have eaten could have been previous victims of Bertie. We don't know. What Bertie hadn't accounted for, though, is the power of stationery. The envelope that the letter was sent in had an emblem on it, which represented the New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. And look, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine that there were tens of thousands of members of the New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association at the time. So the police requested fingerprints from all the members, and none matched the letter or the envelope. Then a young janitor from the company admitted that he'd taken some of the stationery and he'd left it at his boarding room at 200 East 52nd Street when he moved out. Sure enough, Bertie had been staying at the rooming house, but he checked out a few days earlier. So this young guy goes, oh, I stole borrowed some stationery from work, but I left it there. And then it turns out Bertie had been living in the same room. So that's where
excellent detective work.
I tell you, William F. King, he is the hero in this story. Now, Bertie had arranged for some money to be sent to him by his son, and he'd asked the landlady to hold the cheque for him. The police had been discussing with the landladies, and she must have said, he wants to come back for this cheque. So they basically set up a little sting. Yep. So she then contacted Bertie to say, look, the money's arrived. And so when he showed up, William F. King, the detective, was waiting for him. At first, he was okay with going quietly, but then he brandished a razor blade at the police. But William King sorted him out and punched him in the guts hole, and he was arrested. I don't know if he actually punched him in the guts hole.
Geez, they would have been pretty impassioned punches, though, wouldn't they? Like
Yeah, but don't give him a nut punch or you get a needle in your hand.
Oh.
In no time at all, Bertie confessed to killing Grace Budd. He told police he had intended to kill her brother and his mate, but when he saw Grace, he changed his mind. He said it never entered his head to rape the girl, but he later claimed to his attorney that while kneeling on Grace's chest and strangling her, he did have 2 involuntary ejaculations.
Oh.
This information was used at trial to make the claim the kidnapping was sexually motivated, thus avoiding any mention of cannibalism, which I can only assume was to protect the family. I don't know why they wouldn't talk about the cannibalism.
Except the family already knew, didn't they, because of the letter?
The letter, I don't know, yeah, maybe. So because, even though he'd only confessed to killing Grace, his picture was in the paper because it was a bit of sensation, right? And because his picture was in the paper, witnesses who had seen him on other occasions then came forward. So in the case of Billy Gaffney, initially a serial killer named Peter Kudzanowski was a suspect, but then Joseph Meehan, a motorman on a Brooklyn trolley, saw a picture of Bertie and identified him as the old man whom he saw on February 11, 1927. The old man had been trying to quiet a little boy by sitting with him on the trolley. The boy wasn't wearing a jacket, was crying for his mother, and was dragged by the man on and off the trolley. Beaton's description of the boogeyman matched Bertie. Police matched the description of the child to Gaffney. Remember little Billy Beaton? He's the one who talked about the boogeyman? Yeah. So they were connecting that case. They were able to establish he was working in the vicinity of Billy Gaffney's disappearance and had prime opportunity. Bertie claimed the following in a letter to his attorney, and before I start reading this, remember, letters by Bertie are very disturbing, so brace yourselves. I brought him to the Riker Avenue dumps. There is a house that stands alone not far from where I took him. I took the G-boy there, stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet and gagged him with a piece of dirty rag I picked out of the dump. Then I burned his clothes, threw his shoes in the dump. Then I walked back and took trolley to 59th Street at 2 a.m. and walked home from there. Next day, about 2 p.m, I took tools, a good heavy cat-o'-nine tails, homemade, short handle, cut one of my belts in half, slit these half in 6 strips about 8 inches long. I whipped his bare behind till the blood ran from his legs. I cut off his ears, nose, slit his mouth from ear to ear. He was dead then. I picked up 4 old potato sacks and gathered a pile of stones. Then I cut him up. Then I cut him through the middle of his body, just below his belly button, then through his legs about 2 inches below his behind. I put this in my grip with a lot of paper. I cut off the head, feet, arms, hands, and then the legs below the knee. This I put in sacks weighted with stones, tied the ends and threw them into the pools of slimy water you will see along the road going to North Beach. They sank at once. I came home with my meat. I never ate any roast turkey that tasted half as good as his sweet, fat little behind. I ate every bit of the meat in about 4 days. Ugh. So, Beatrice Keel's dad, Hans, came forward and identified Bertie as the weirdo who'd been hanging around Port Richmond when Francis McDonald was taken, and the Richmond County District Attorney, Thomas J. Walsh, announced his intention to seek an indictment against him for the boy's murder. Bertie denied being involved, but then in March 1935, after the conclusion of his trial for Grace Budd's murder and his confession to the killing of Billy Gaffney, he then confirmed to investigators that he also raped and murdered MacDonald. When the MacDonald confession was made public, the New York Daily Mirror wrote that the disclosure solidified Bertie's reputation, and I think we will all agree, as the most vicious child slayer in criminal history. In the trial against Bertie for the murder of Grace Budd, Bertie pled insanity, saying voices from God told him to kill children. Several psychiatrists testified about Bertie's sexual fetishisms, which included sadism and masochism, flagellation, exhibitionism, voyeurism, picarism, cannibalism, coprophagia, urophilia, hermatolagnia, pedophilia, necrophilia, and inflammation.
I'm not going to ask what they are because I don't want to know. Infibulation. Well,
most of those. Hermatolagnia is drinking blood.
Shut up.
Anyway,
move on.
Defence Counsel James Dempsey. I am. Defence Counsel James Dempsey, in his summation, noted that Birdie was a psychiatric phenomenon and that nowhere in legal or medical records was there another individual who possessed so many sexual abnormalities. The trial consisted mainly of various psychiatrists debating whether Bertie was sane or insane, as that would impact on the verdict and penalty. Eventually, the jury decided to find him sane and guilty, though they actually thought he was insane, but they wanted him to be executed anyway.
Yeah, well played, jury.
Which I understand, but I do question the ethics on that, but never mind.
Ordinarily I would, but...
As he was found guilty of Grace's murder, the judge sentenced him to death by electrocution. And I figure that's probably why he said, yeah, fine, I did all the others, because he was already on death row at that point. He was executed on January the 16th at 1936 at Sing Sing and was buried in the prison cemetery. He was alleged to have helped the executioner position the electrodes on his body. Oh, how weird
to get
is
more
this man?
pain.
I don't know. And then his last words were reportedly, no, I don't even know why I'm here. They were his last words.
What?
Oh, he was, what's the expression? Mad as a cut snake.
Cray.
Many knives short of a drawer, 20,000 cents short of a dollar, etc.
Short of a a few sandwiches short of a picnic.
Short of a picnic, yeah. According to one witness present, it took 2 jolts before Bertie died, creating the rumour that the apparatus was short-circuited by the needles that he'd inserted in his body. And they did take an X-ray of his body, and there were 29 needles resident in his groin.
In his groin?
Perineum, stick them
not
around
up his...
everywhere.
Not where the nails were.
His perineum. Basically, if you were to take an X-ray of where I'd be looking at your pelvis and your hips, right, and not seeing your flesh because it's an X-ray. Imagine 29 needles that were all about.
I'm just wondering how many are internal and how many
you.
are external.
They were all internal.
Oh.
So apparently it's untrue, by the way, that he
course.
died in the same fashion and time frame as everyone else in the electric chair. He didn't short it out, especially with his needles. After his execution, his defence attorney, James Dempsey, revealed that he was in possession of his client's final statement. This amounted to several pages of handwritten notes that Bertie apparently penned in the hours just prior to his death. When pressed by the assembled journalists to reveal the document's contents, Dempsey refused, stating, "I will never show it to anyone. It was the most filthy string of obscenities that I have ever read."
Thank you.
Which, really, given the other two the statement and the letter that I read, is not surprising. And who knows whether or not whatever he'd written in it was just rambling anyway. Though he was convicted of one murder, so Grace Buds, and he would confess to the other 2 as well. So he confessed to all 3.
Yeah.
He probably did kill other kids, and the number could be up to 100, but there's no way to confirm that. Now, as for calling him the werewolf of Wisteria or the Brooklyn vampire, clearly this was just editorialising at the time. As we established in the werewolf episode, with no evidence of transmogrification or even the suggestion from Bertie himself that he was a wolf by night or garlic-hating immortal bloodsucker, clearly the names are a load of old shit. However, they did lead me to find him in the big wide world of the internet, so no, he wasn't a werewolf or a vampire, but he was a monster. And that is Hamilton Howard Albert, the shit-eater fish.
The shit-eater. Ugh.
Thoughts?
I'm lost for words. That was too much.
So am I.
You crossed the line, Schmidty.
That was too much.
I do like to think that I might have done some of that stuff, but I do like to think that by the time he was writing that letter about Grace and by the time that he got himself worked up and he didn't do half of those things, but he was a sicko, absolute sicko. So he certainly was a cannibal and a sadist and a monster, but he wasn't a werewolf. He wasn't a vampire.
Oh, well, that's all right then. Phew, what a relief.
Just got bloody dibs on himself, hadn't he?
Mm-hmm.
No, he didn't call himself
Is it, though?
So the problem with him, right, though...
Tell me.
Before... Is it?
Yeah,
no.
is there a problem?
Yes, the problem with him is how to sentence him from our perspective, because I would normally go down the path of some gratuitous, violent and painful thing, but he would love it.
Yes.
So it's sort of like, what do you do with someone like this?
I feel like you've pushed me to a point where I'm still recovering before I can even judge. Like that was pretty horrid.
It's harsh.
You didn't really need to read those letters out. I mean, much as I love you.
Well,
Maybe you'd like to rethink that for your next episode like this.
I listened to 53 accounts of evisceration, emasculation, strangling, stabbing, eye gouging from you. So, people in glass houses, my friend.
You also could have
tell vicious murder
again,
stories.
it's not a competition. You could have learnt from it and gone, no, I don't want to do that. But no, hold my beer, as Swanee said last episode.
It would have been it would have been a short. Well, there's not 53 of them at least. It only did 3.
No, there's a lot of detail.
And we only really know if it's real. If it's real. It's his own account, and he's an absolute nutter.
I'm sorry, I haven't really added much because I just am speechless.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah, it is. It is all of that. I don't even want to talk about it.
It's hard to know what to say.
We sometimes have a debrief about these things, but
no,
it's all just so wrong.
I'm depleted by that story.
Yeah,
I know.
And you came in a bit bruised as well.
Yeah, that's it 2 in a row. Yeah,
it's that thing of when someone says it with such conviction. And, the letter to the mother, oh, my God.
It really is the stuff
It's weird too. The letter to the mother is so weird.
It's the stuff nightmares are made of, though. Like, when you grow up having fears about things, this just ticks so many boxes as to...
Ticks every box. I think the only thing that's missing is a fucking submarine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only bit missing. Too soon.
Actually, on the submarine, the idea of it imploding suddenly and you dying instantly is
I'm all
much
up for that.
less,
Same here. I thought you'd all think that.
Disturbing.
Totally. It's done.
Waiting for your death in the dark and the freezing cold while the
yeah.
oxygen runs out. That was so horrific to think that is what happened to those poor people.
Oh, no, I think everyone's breathing a sigh of relief.
Well, I mean, it's not a happy ending, but at least they didn't suffer is the point. Yeah.
They weren't tortured.
I'm just thinking I want to unmake him because he's a monster and he should never have come into the world. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like that's kind of easy in some ways. So I might just remove him. I might have this magical machine where I remove him from the timeline so he can't do any of those things, but he's still a formed individual, so he still feels and whatever. And then I'm going to maybe put him in a meat grinder and just grind him up and fertilise the garden with him.
Brilliant.
Yep. That'll certainly get rid of him, which is good.
Well, his last name was Fish, and I like putting a bit of sea salt on the garden, so,
Well, would he foul your veggies, though, or would he?
Blood and bone. Bit of blood and bone.
Charlie Carp.
I'm still lost.
What do you reckon, Clark?
I'm still lost. I normally...
I just don't know what to say.
Well, I normally get there really quickly, but I'm like, oh, my God. And I think the bit that he actually likes
I'm no match
the pain
with him.
as well, like you said. Like,
Yeah.
You can't punish him to something super painful. No. Maybe he needs to be punished to... When I went to Tokyo Disneylando, also known as Tokyo Disneyland, there was a ride.
Oh, I would never have got that.
I know, right? The first one was the Japanese for Tokyo Disneyland, though.
Oh,
Tokyo Disneylando.
Oh, right, I missed that. Now,
and then it's Tokyo Disneyland.
Oh, yes, would never do that.
Like McDonald's is Makoto Naruto. That's another story. So anyway, at Tokyo Disneyland, there was a ride called It's a Small World. And you know the song It's a Small World?
At every Disneyland.
And so
It's a small
That's it. So I feel like perhaps he could be sentenced to going on that ride for all eternity with the kids who are singing It's a Small World out of reach. You can't touch them. There's no pain involved. He's just constantly tortured by the opportunity, but also it's kind of a happy world, which is not what he's used to and hopefully not what would make him comfortable. So maybe that would be torturous for him. And if that was torturous for him, then that's where he can go.
At this point, I'm thinking that I'm the one who's had to serve the sentence because we've had to listen to that fucking horror story. That is horrendous.
Yeah,
I just cannot go.
She's the crime, isn't she?
I'm at the end of my tether.
It all happened in 1934. It's nearly 100 years ago.
I know. It's just so macabre.
Oh, that's all right. Sorry, my mistake. That's fine then. There's nothing wrong with it.
I think it's actually where I find things like this particularly disturbing is when we shift from someone having committed a crime to someone like premeditating things, and then the level of just fear that, when someone's so exposed to what's going on to them and it's prolonged, and I cannot cope with that. That's one of my biggest fears is that, not that someone's going to kill me so much as that someone does it in that way, which is just the prolonged horror of it. That I find difficult to deal with. But it's the letters.
Oh.
That level of detail and the smugness that comes with, well, I've done this and I've done that and then I had to do that. And then, he's quite eloquent the way he speaks in those. I'm like, I can't.
Imagine getting that letter.
Cope.
Like you said, 6 years on, Schmidty.
I don't know how to punish that because there's nothing in my repertoire of things that I can pull out that would have any impact on someone that
even if you did do what he did.
Just put him in a pit with Chikatilo.
Yeah, even if you did what he did, the letter is completely unnecessary. Like you don't have to do that.
Until his eyes are gouged out, maybe he won't like it that much. Surely there's a tipping point. It's like, oh, that's nice. That's no, hang on, and then it's all gone too far. And suddenly you're intestines.
Did he love anyone in his life? Do you know?
I don't know. He seemed to like his children. He seemed to be fond of his kids, and I think he liked his wife. There was no indication that he abused any of them. It's almost like he compartmentalised it. It was all, that's the family and that's the life.
Hideous.
Yeah, I don't want to ask any more questions.
I'm done. Sorry.
I'm out. And that's where the podcast ended.
Yeah.
We've made it to episode 100.
Considering I didn't even after he went back to the dump at Sing Sing, where it was, I didn't hear what he did, but it went on for so long, and every time I'd lift the
saw you
headphones
doing
up
that.
you'd say stew, and I'd be like, no.
And for our listeners, at one point while I'm reading it, I will sound like I've laughed. I've laughed at Swanee taking her
is that what
headset
you were
off,
laughing at?
listening a little bit.
I was horrified.
And then putting it away. And then
You've been doing this for too long.
I felt like it was a tambourine. Did you think it was like a tambourine, like lifting it up and down and lifting it up and down? It went on and on. I'm like, she's still fucking reading out that letter. Oh, my God. It's horrendous.
I could see it in my peripheral vision, and that's why I laughed, not because I thought anything in the letter was funny.
No, of course not.
I know. Sorry about that one. So thank you for listening to that. Yes, that was our 100th episode. And, I didn't want to end it with, do our 100th episode with something that,
mediocre.
Was a lad Bible. No. I didn't want to do a lad Bible edit. I wanted to bring something, for want of a better word, meaty to the table. And so there we go.
It was a lot of true crime, a little less comedy.
I don't know. We had some laughs at certain points.
Well, you did.
But as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Ciao. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine. Or visit our website, www.trialbywine.com, to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.